Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one's a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Hello, everyone. It's me, Andrew. It's nighttime, and I'm ready to go memes. But we had to do a special thing today. I think you don't have enough memory on your computer. We'll find out if this even records. And if it doesn't, I feel like you'll figure out what our thoughts on this movie were. But anyway, oh, look, I have a shirt specifically because we're on video now. By the way, you don't know this because we haven't released the other one, but we're gonna start doing video because YouTube keeps shutting us down, and also the next video you're gonna hear or see is gonna sound really bad because we couldn't figure out the microphone. But this one should sound good and look really bad based on what Josh looks like right now. But anyway,
It's
so yeah,
late.
we've been having problems with the stupid YouTube, and so we're going to try to do videos so that we don't get copyrighted striked. And since we are doing a podcast exclusive anyway, where we don't show any clips, we figured this would be the perfect time to start trying it. And so today's movie is 2022's Rob Zombie, the King of Horror movie, the Munsters. Okay, let's Josh, what's the Munsters about? In one sentence.
Um, a family of monsters moves into a normal neighborhood.
Kind of. I mean, that happens in
Well,
the
that's what
last
the
five.
TV show's about.
That happens in the last five
That's
minutes.
this movie is not about that, which is very surprising to me.
Yeah, well, okay, so this is an origin of the original TV show, The Munsters, and it's telling the story about how Herman met Lily Munster and how they fell in love. It's also, yeah, so it's kind of a prequel, and also it's Rob Zombie's first family film, I think. So before we get into what we thought of this movie, let's do what I like to do called kill some time. Josh, what do you think? Because personally, I'm not the hugest Rob Zombie fan. I remember when we were in high school, someone was telling me about the plot of House of a Thousand Corpses, and I was like, this movie sounds like the most amazing movie that I've ever heard. And then I saw it, and I was like, okay, no, never mind. Um, and that's kind of been my thought processes all along. I do like Lords of Salem. We will talk about Lords of Salem eventually, but I figured, this is a completely new venue for Rob. Let's see what he does with it. But Josh, what do you think of? What are your thoughts on Rob Zombie?
I mean, like, okay, I'm not a huge fan. I do. It's kind of like when people describe his movies to you conceptually, it sounds really cool, and then you're always like, oh well. I mean, it didn't quite get there, you know.
Yeah.
But this movie, I don't know. It's like this movie kind of, despite being technically like his first like family friendly movie, has a lot of the same problems as his other
Right, right.
movies.
I
Or
think of like in if you think about like Halloween, his Michael Myers is like, of course, the original Halloween. It's like, oh, he could be anyone. That's the whole point of it. Rob Zombie goes a completely different way with it and makes him into a giant monster that's like 8 feet tall and can pick up cars. And like, okay, that's a kind of cool idea. It's not exactly Jason. It could be a little bit different. But Rob Zombie doesn't do anything with that idea because he just everyone else pretends like Michael Myers isn't 8 feet tall. And so it's like there could be a good idea in there, but you don't really play with it in the way you should. And so it just kind of feels like a mistake. Speaking of feels like a mistake, yeah. So this movie started, and yeah, okay. So let's talk about this film.
okay, like it's another one where it's like I get what he's going for, but like the whole Munsters is like, oh, it's a fish out of water. How weird is it that they're with? But this movie is 90% them being in Monster Town
Right, which again could
doing
have been a
monster
cool
things.
idea,
Yeah.
but there's not okay. So in the movie, like it starts off and Lily Munster is like looking for a date and she goes on a date with some guy. And just to kind of show you what the humor does, and I know people are saying that they found it funny, but like okay. So there's a part where she's on a date with like a Nosferatu style vampire, and like they're talking about the service, and so she looks at the two people next to him, and they're skeletons, and she goes, "Wow, they've been waiting a while," and it like pans to them being skeletons. That's a funny, if not unoriginal, joke. But then the Nosferatu style monster goes, "Yeah, they're dead," and it's like, "Oh, so what's the joke? Because if they're
Yeah.
dead, then that's not a joke." So
That's
it's kind of like I don't like. I even laughed at that part, and then it's completely undercut by the next line, and it's
it's
not.
kind of that's kind of all the jokes in this. I mean, it's weird
Yeah,
because it's not the like I was like, oh well, maybe it's a kids movie. It's going to be a lot of very like jokes for kids, and it's like that's fine. There should be movies like that, but it's almost too like cynical for kids, but not really clever enough for adults. It's a weird
right,
middle
right.
ground.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
in that same scene, like the guy's like, "Hey, do you like rats?" And uh, Lily's like, "Who doesn't?" And then she shows him pictures of the rats, but then it cuts to Lily, and she's like, "Ugh, this is gross." And it's like, wait, don't you guys like rats? Like, isn't that the whole thing about the monsters that they like evil things? And then it's like, so and originally when she said who doesn't, I thought she was being sincere, but she might have been, but then like Rob Zombie forgets, and so she just makes it into like a regular person seeing someone with baby rats. And yeah, and so like that's the thing, like it's just weird. I don't know what the humor is going for. I don't think, to be fair, I'm not the type of like even in his regular movies, I've never found his humor to be that funny. Like whenever he tries to make a joke, because his jokes seem to come from like this, "Hey, this is gross," or like, "I'm gonna say bud and wiggle my butt in the air," which I guess is supposed to be a joke, but he uses it a lot for it not to be a joke. But I've never laughed at that.
It's almost like it's like silly without actually having punchlines, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of
But
like when someone makes like they have the formula for what a joke sounds like, so they say that, but they don't like know what a joke is. So there's no joke. It's like a Tom Myers joke, where it's like he understands how jokes work, but there's
he
no
just
joke
doesn't
in it.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah, he
doesn't
knows when to
understand
pause.
punchlines.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this is unfair because this movie's still better than Paul Blart Mall Cop. But if you've ever, did you ever see like they were showing like the shooting Paul Blart Mall Cop where he like everyone's having a real good time on set and like laughing a lot, and then in this movie you
Right.
kind of feel like okay, I could tell everyone on set was having a good time filming it, but it doesn't like it's still not like landing. I don't know. It's like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
like everyone's very committed to
Right.
what they're doing. I just don't like necessarily
No.
the end
Yeah.
products, you know?
And it
Yeah.
okay, and like I know we're spending a lot of time on this first scene, but to be fair, so does Rob Zombie. It takes so long. And then
Ev-
that character just leaves and he doesn't come back. It was just like an introduction to Lily, but it's so long.
Yeah, well, and we should. There's like because it's like staggered. It's like there's she's on the date, and then there's these two grave robbers, and then there's the count watching TV, and then there's the count's son has
Who's
been
a werewolf.
kidnapped
Yeah.
by a fortune teller who's trying to, and then there's so much plot happening, and it's like totally just cuts randomly, and you're like, this is so unstructured. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's weird because it feels episodic, but for not any real reason, you know? It doesn't feel
Yeah,
like a long episode of the Munsters. It kind of feels like I'm flipping channels through a Munsters marathon, and I'm like,
and
no, not
and
this one.
stuff just really doesn't, like, none of the, I think part of the problem too is like with the kids movie you expect it to be a very simplistic plot, like, oh, here's the problem, here's how they overcome it, next scene, whatever.
Right.
But in this, scenes just kind of ends, like,
Yeah.
at one point they, like, later they get married and they're just in Paris, and then it just cuts to them not being in Paris, and you're
Yeah,
like,
I
okay.
literally looked down at my drink and I looked up and they're in Paris and I was very confused. And
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
just
then it cuts to like they're making Herman Munster, and it's like this guy and he's gonna use the brain of the like smartest person in the world. I guess Elon Musk. Um, that's the kind of humor that I'm bringing to the
that's
table, so
good.
you know.
Were you a writer on
Yeah.
this?
So you know that I know what I'm talking about. And then like, but then they're like, and by the way, he has a twin brother who's a comedian, and no one would ever exchange their brains, which is like that was a funny joke that they're like only an idiot would exchange their brains or whatever. And so obviously their brains get switched, and so Herman comes to life, and then there's like weird things in there. Like there's this joke where the guy says like it's alive, like the Frankenstein joke, and then or the Frankenstein line, and then the scientist. This is the Igor. The scientist is like, "What do you mean, Igor? What do you mean he's alive?" And he's like, "Oh, I have a cockroach. He's alive. I thought he was dead." And then it cuts to the worst CGI'd cockroach. It's like my version of the CGI cockroach. And then the guy slams it, and it's like you didn't need to cut to a CGI cockroach. You could have just had him like tiny, and then they slap him. Like we didn't need to see it. It's just such a weird like. Why did you add this to
Yeah,
make it look so bad?
it's and it goes on too long. I don't know. Every scene kind of goes on too. The sets are really nice, though. I will say I
Well,
liked
see,
their,
and
like, Halloween Town sets.
that's the other thing. The sets are super nice, but it's filmed like a TV show from the 50s, which I don't know if he's trying to do that or if he just doesn't know how to shoot things. Because based on like 31, I think he just doesn't know how to shoot stuff. And so,
The-
like, even when the sets are cool, like, he shoots them in a way so that they look bad. Like, you can
yeah,
tell.
you'll catch glimpses of the cool set, like,
Yeah. And,
sometimes.
like, if they had just framed it or done some color correcting on it other than just, like, raising saturation all the way to the top, I feel like it would have been way better. Just because, like, there's a scene, like, when they're making Herman Munster and it cuts to, like, a close up of the scientist and you see, like, the red like vortex behind him and it kind of looks like Creepshow. That looks cool, but then immediately he cuts too far so you can see the borders of the light that they're using, and it just doesn't, like, it just looks so bad. And so even like the cool stuff is undermined by the shoddy camera work. And this is a universal direct to video movie. I don't know why Rob Zombie's on this, to be honest. I don't think he's at that level. But so there could have been like they could have just been like, hey, you have a week to shoot this, and so he just shot it the easiest way possible. But even then, it just looks like the sets are cool, the makeup's cool. Like I even like the throwback to the old makeup and the old kind of look of it, but it like the way it's filmed. Like if you look at the Addams Family movie, it's so like more vibrant just because of the way they
It's, like,
film it.
dynamic, kind of.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's I
yeah.
mean they do a little bit more realistic, but like Pugsley still looks like Pugsley, and like like Uncle Fester still looks like Uncle Fester, and so they don't look that realistic. But it still works because of how they're framing it and how the tone is. And this one, I don't ever know what the tone is. I don't know what the frame they're going for is supposed to be. Because if they're just trying to mimic the TV show, I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah, it's like you never quite get the sense that he landed on, like, definitive, like,
Yeah,
decision. It's
yeah,
very like, oh, let's do a little bit of it, like they do, like star wipes, but it's like a bat or lightning bolt, and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, but then I don't know, it's like they don't really push it enough. It's, yeah, it's muddled.
Yeah, and then they do the thing where okay, so then like Herman has the comedian's head, like brain in his head, and so he starts making jokes, but I don't understand. Like in the original show, which I didn't watch a lot of it, but I did watch it as a kid. I haven't seen it since. But in the original show, Herman would make kind of like these dad jokes that were funny for kids, but like the kind of the joke was that also he was like bad at comedy, but he didn't realize it, and nobody like really questioned him because he's a giant Frankenstein monster. And like they don't really do that because he's telling the jokes to other monsters, and then sometimes the monsters laugh, and sometimes they hate it. And so I'm like, I don't know whether he's
Yeah,
like
that's
in this universe, he's
like
supposed to be funny or not.
yeah, it's so weird, and I think that's part of the problem is that like the fact that they're in like Halloween Town, Transylvania means none of the like oh people are reacting badly to them stuff totally works because like in the next scene they'll be like oh we love that you love to drink blood. I don't know. It's just it doesn't feel cohesive.
Yeah, and they like rely way too much on the. Oh, I brought you something to drink. It's like, oh, is this a soda? It's like, no, it's blood. It's
Yeah,
type
and
one blood. It's like, okay.
we usually like that is like the first 80-90% of the movie is that like
And
it's
like,
just
it's not even. It's the weird thing that happens with Rob Zombie movies where he's on one hand he's very inventive, and on the other hand he's very derivative, and it's this weird mix. Like every character in this movie has their own Igor, and you're like there could have been a joke where like Igors are just kind of like dogs, or like they're like the Mr. Meeseeks from Rick and Morty. But no, it's never explained why everyone has like a hunchback Igor that serves them.
yeah it's just yeah
It's just kind of like, okay, this is just. I mean, I honestly think that he just like, well, yeah, Frankenstein has to have an Igor, and also Creepy Castle has to have an Igor, and it's like, yeah, but now you have like four Igors in this movie, and then
that's
there's
just like the big like the doctor who raises him
yeah,
just leaves the movie. Like he's not really a character, but like you think he will be because he is kind of a big deal, and
yeah,
then
I thought
he's
it was
just
gonna be
kind
like
of
the bad guy or something, but he just
yeah, like
leaves.
he's trying to get like Herman Munster back. There was one funny joke, not because of the movie, but where he's like, "Oh, the doctor goes on vacation," and then he's like, "Well, they had a terrible time at like the leper colony. He has like leprosy," and they're like, "Oh, but they gave you that shirt." He's like, "Oh, they just gave this to me because they lost my luggage," and it wasn't funny because of the movie, but it's funny because that happened to you a week
Oh
ago.
yeah, yeah, I'm
and
like that doctor because I
you had to wear a Garfield shirt for 2 days.
right. We just got back from Josh's wedding, and so yeah, I had to wear a Garfield shirt for because that was the only shirt I could find in all of Portland. And so they lost my luggage for 2 days. So yeah, I relate
Yeah,
to that doctor. And also, I was in a place I didn't want to be. So much like again, like the doctor, we're very similar.
yeah,
Um,
I enjoyed
so
that.
yeah, and like okay, and then there's like a part where they go to Paris. Okay, so they meet and they instantly fall in love. Like there's a weird subplot where like Herman is a rock star, and it's for
Yeah.
one scene, and the guy never comes back.
Well, it goes from him being a comedian to he's now a rock star to yeah, just he's not anymore. Like it's
Yeah.
very like oh, you didn't even want to have like a spinning newspaper to explain like his
And
rise to fame
And why
or
didn't
you
they just
know
make him a rock star from the beginning and have it be like Herman's a rocker until he meets Lily? Rob Zombie is a rocker. It would make 100% sense. And I did like that Herman. We do hear the song in its entirety, which was a mistake. But the song is like that weird kind of '60s punk pop rock. That was interesting because it's like they kind of took the alternative scene from when the Munsters was filmed and like used that into a modern like Munsters song. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. It's way too long and it had nothing to do with the plot. Oh, Josh, by the way, let me ask you a question. How long did it take you before you started to realize that Sherry Moon Zombie was gonna do this with her arms like every time she was on?
I just kind of assumed
Because like
all
the
of his guys. I mean, obviously, but all of his guys from his movies were in it, like doing their thing. You
yeah,
know,
like I don't hate Jerry Zombie. I think she carries Lords of Salem, which again we'll talk about later. But in this movie, her she's always like I started to notice that in the rock scene, she's going like this. Ooh. and I thought that's how she dances. But then, at just random points throughout the whole movie, she'll be like, "What's going on, Herman?" And I'm like, "What is happening? Is this what you get off
Did you
the?"
also notice the Rob Zombie staple of this movie takes place in every decade, where it's
Yeah,
like sometimes it's the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s, just depending
yeah.
on
At
what it
the
needs
end,
to
when
be.
they like went out and saw the saw the like neighborhood, for a second I was like, "Oh, are they weirded out because all the neighbors are from the '50s and it's been the '90s or whatever since then?" So yeah, so they fall in love immediately. For some reason, she pays off the brother and she doesn't know that that's her brother, and the brother like introduces him to Herman. The brother is such a weird character because again, he's set up as such a major antagonist, and then you see him a few times, and then he never does anything of importance. And then he's at the end, but it's like, why would you introduce a new character if this is an origin story? It would be
Yeah,
like at the end of the Han Solo movie if Han Solo kissed a girl who's not Princess Leia. I think that's her official canon name. And then
he's
like it's
a
like, what are you doing? You
he's
guys are gonna have to break up.
he's in like 5 minutes of the movie, but every major plot point revolves around him. Oddly enough,
He's in
like
five
he's
minutes of the
the
movie, and every time the camera is looking at his back, they've added a howl that he's not motioning towards. You don't see him ever howl, but
there
he
wasn't
howls so many times.
some good ADR in this.
There was an amazing. Okay, so Sharon Zombie or Lily, she goes up and she's like, "I want to meet Herman," and then the brother comes down. He's like, "Give me some money and we'll do it." And then she goes, "Okay, here's some money," and then he goes, "Yeah, he's in there. Go talk to him." And then he like walks away and he goes, "Ah woo!" And then he laughs, and then like you see him from the back because obviously you only see him howl when it's from the back. And then it cuts to him from the front, but now Lily and him are back like parallel, even though in the previous scene she had just walked away. And he's laughing like because in the okay, he laughs, howls, and then it cuts, and then he laughs again. It was clearly the other side of that scene, and they just added it back in for no real reason, just to get another shot of him laughing. I feel like I've gone insane with some of these
No,
reviews
it
about
is
this
like
movie.
if you pay too close of attention, like because I did expect like Rob Zombie kind of like, oh, it's a music video style editing, but like it's very sloppy, like just straight
Well, that's the
like
thing.
oh,
Like
that's where you cut, you know, that kind of stuff.
I
Yeah.
feel like up until Halloween 2, like with 31 and with this one, and if you made another one, probably the one that's the third Devil's Rejects. I feel like he's gotten into this mode where he's 100% independent, and so nobody's telling him like, "Hey, this edit is bad. Like you need to re-edit this." Because it kind of feels like I know for a long time I was like, yeah, if Rob Zombie just gets material that he doesn't make, it would probably not be so derivative. But watching what he does do, it's kind of like, oh, I don't think he understands like a three-act structure, you know?
Yeah, I almost and I've always like thought. I mean, not necessarily in this, but it's like a lot of his horror movies. I'm like, well, it's not written well, but it like there's a lot of good shot. Like it's directed well, and
Yeah,
this didn't really have that. But I
right,
could
right.
almost see
And
if
you see
someone
him,
else wrote it and structured it. You know,
slowly like losing it, like in House of a Thousand Corpse. Well, Devil's Rejects is the most clear cut of all his movies in ABC like through line of a story. But by the time even he's at Halloween, like you spend like 45 minutes with Michael Myers, and then like the last 25 minutes is just like a remake of Halloween. So you don't ever get that chance to like connect with Laurie like you do in the original. And it's like he doesn't understand that you have to connect with Laurie for the movie to work. Because you have to want her to live. And you definitely don't want her to be murdered because she's so annoying. And
well,
so
I don't think he understands that you should connect or sympathize with
And I think
anyone.
that's the thing. Like in this one, I feel so disconnected from any of the characters
Yeah,
because they don't like. I understand that they have the makeup on, and it would have been a hard task for anyone to get us to relate to these, not just monsters, but like Party City style monsters. And I commend him for doing for taking on that challenge, but I don't think he realized that it was a challenge, and so he doesn't make us attempt to connect to these creatures in any way. Like there's no points where I ever feel like Herman has a real emotion, and it might be because every 15 minutes the entire plot of the movie changes to something else. But
right.
it's just like it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like a collection, not even of scenes. It feels like a collection of cosplay that Rob Zombie has taken in a haunted house that he had access to. It feels like that Spirit Halloween song by that one guy that had a more coherent story than this.
Yeah, because he had the Jeff Bezos in his basement trying to kill him, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I will say, I've dogged on this movie a lot. But when they get married, she comes out of the coffin and it's like there's red smoke and it fills up the whole screen and she's kind of like holding the flowers like she's dead. And then she kind of like floats. I was like, okay, so he knows how to do things. What the hell has he been doing this whole time?
he tries more when it's his wife. You know, it's all these guys getting canceled for you know cheating on their wives, but Rob Zombie's the ultimate wife guy.
Yeah,
He'll,
people dog on Rob Zombie for always putting in his wife, but I'm like, hell no. If I was married to an actress, I would always like. Why else would you be married to an
I
actress
know.
to work with her? Yeah,
I find it commendable,
yeah,
but
exactly. It'd be like, yeah, that's just so funny to be mad at him for like casting his favorite person in the movie. Like, who's he gonna cast? Um, yeah, I'll protect you on that one, Rob Zombie. But yeah, and okay, so I know we're jumping all over the place, but it's kind of like I know I jumped to them being married, but that's because they fall in love. Like they meet at that basement, then they go on one date, and then the next date is them getting married, and then it cuts to a montage of them being in love, and then it cuts to them in Paris on their honeymoon, and then they meet like the creature from the Black Lagoon, but he's just a guy in a mask, and they didn't even like make his mouth move.
so, yeah, like I'm almost okay. I don't know. There's like this weird like, and then again, it's like undermining the joke because it's almost like they go to the beach and then it shows them meet the monster and then it shows them watching the creature from the Black Lagoon
Right.
in the theater with it. It's like, wouldn't it have been funnier if they were watching it on a date and then it cuts to them and they're watching it with them? Like it's like
Yeah.
you did the reveal in reverse.
Right.
Like
Or
I don't
wouldn't it have
know.
been funny if like they had that Hollywood like that Party City mask and then they ask him like why he isn't moving his mouth and he's like, "Oh, I got Botox" or something. Like something to explain the joke or like to make it a joke. And that's the problem like, okay, if you wanted to add the Party City guy whose mouth doesn't even move, that's fine, but like is that part of the joke or did you not have enough budget to
Well,
get a real guy?
see, I don't mind how bad, like the cheat, like the kind of crappy effects. Like I think that almost helps the movie because
Well, my
it's
point isn't
supposed
that.
to be that. But
See,
yeah,
my
I don't
point
know if
isn't like, did he do those crappy effects because he's trying to make a point about how you can love the show even though it has bad effects? Or like, maybe he's just trying to, maybe he just wants to see those things. But that's not a good enough reason. Like, why is he putting these in there? Or is it like a budgetary problem? And like, maybe if that's the case, don't put the creature from the Black Lagoon in there, you know? I just don't like if it was part of the joke, I never felt like I was in on the joke. And if it and it felt like it wasn't part of the joke and I felt like it was no bueno.
I don't know if it's a joke so much as he probably just likes it.
Yeah. I think
Like
that goes like with a lot of this movie and all
like
their movies.
like a lot of times they'll be watching like 50s TV shows and there's not really a joke. They're just watching TV shows and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, remember how TV
It
was in
is
black and
I,
white?
I will say it is like as seen the good side of things. I do think it's funny that Rob Zombie likes like the most gruesome Texas Chainsaw horror films, but then the only other thing he likes is like Leave It to Beaver style sitcoms, you know?
Well, and they do. I do like the all like kind of like if someone jumps on a stool, it'll be like boy, oing, like it'll do the stupid
Yeah.
sound effects, and it's
Like I
like, all
kind of
right.
feel like if you
I
showed
like
him
how much he likes it, you
if you
know.
showed him The Office, he would like be so bored, but if you showed him like Howdy Doody reruns, he would be like super enthralled into it, you know?
Right. See, that's almost like I almost feel like he's the guy. If someone had written the script instead of him and gave it to him to film, all of those little touches wouldn't be like bomb. There's some because you could follow like a
See, but
plot,
and I think about
you
that,
know.
but do you think that Rob Zombie would have been okay with like a meta Scooby Doo style version of the monster? I don't even think he would have been okay with like an Adams Family barely meta version of the movie. I think he needed
Yeah,
to be like the only way Rob Zombie was gonna make this movie is if it was this. this kind of like just collection of scenes that like aren't even things like the Rob Zombie thinks are funny. It's just like, well, I have to write something.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of
I'm
like, and
trying
you can
so hard to
almost
be nice, but it's 9 o'clock and I'm tired.
you could almost see too where he's like, all right, I've had all the scenes I've got to fucking around. Now's the time in the plot where they have to like lose the house and like because things will just kind of suddenly happen,
Right, right.
like it's like okay, the scene's over. Now here's the plot. Now back to the actors goofing around.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, there's stuff in here that I really liked. I really like the whole sequence. So then they lose the house and then they go to California because Herman Munster thinks he can be a movie star. And then they meet this real estate agent and like there's a house on the neighborhood that they hate or like that she hates because she can't ever get rid of it, and then it's clearly the Munsters house. Like it's gonna be the Munsters house by the time you get to it, because Rob Zombie has literally spelled it out for you a million times by that point. And so, and it's like even okay. Let me finish my thought, and then I'll get into another thought that annoyed me. So then, like, they see the house that she wants to show them, and it's like a suburban, like, bullshit house. And they see the Munsters house, and they're like, "We'll take it." And like, she thinks they're joking, and they think she's joking, and like, that's a pretty good like little sequence. But then it takes so long to end because then he's like, "Oh, we'll take the house," and she's like, "Oh, or no," she's like, "He's like, you can't scam me. I know you're trying to get more money out of us." And she's like, "No, you can take the house right now. Whatever you want to pay, take it." And he's like, but then he keeps going. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't hear you." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's okay to do 50 style jokes, but if you're not gonna do a play on it, I'm just watching a joke that Bugs Bunny beat you to by 40 years and fucking blew it out of the water. Like what am I watching you do a bad version of Looney Tunes for?
See, but I do feel like if they had almost gone like the first 15 minutes is in like Transylvania and then the rest is them like getting the house and like becoming the
Yeah,
Munsters
I think
family.
that would have been way better.
That's like because it's very like okay, you meet three of the Munsters.
Yeah.
Like you don't even meet the whole family. The whole family's not there yet.
They could have done something
Like
with like the brother, like maybe he's actually a monster, and like they have to show you the difference. I don't know. There's so many different ways to go with it, and like you said, the humor of the Munsters was that they were fish out of water, and like we don't spend any time with them because even then they get to. Okay, this is the other thing that annoyed me. Again, it's just the way he writes. If you like this, just know it's not for me, and there's nothing wrong with you. So like there's a scene where she's talking to the real estate agent and they're like, "Oh, we'll go see you tomorrow," and she goes, "Okay, see you tomorrow," and then she goes, "Oh, but by the way, I'm gonna be dressed up like Halloween because tomorrow's Halloween and we're having a big Halloween party, so don't be freaked out by how I look." And then they like make the like, "Oh, women be caring about their looks." That's like the joke that he wanted to land. It's like the joke that he couldn't not write into the movie. And so
yeah,
then it cuts to her and she's just like a witch and she's like, "Oh, you guys got costumes on too." Like it would just cut to her meeting them. And she could have been like, "Oh, happy Halloween. You guys are dressed up. We have a big party here." Like you could have made that part of the story instead of setting up a weird joke that we know is already coming.
yeah, no, and it's like
Like she
she's
could
freaked
have been
out, but
like,
she also thought it was Halloween, so would she
yeah,
be that scared?
she could
Yeah,
have been
no,
like
I know what you mean.
she could have been like turned around and she's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm dressed up." And then she turns around, she's like, "Oh, you're dressed up too, and they're both witches." Like there's so many ways to make that stupid joke work, but he picked the way that it takes the longest and it doesn't work for me.
It's like he always wants everyone to be kind of half in on the joke, but not
Hmm.
in on it. So it's
Yeah.
like sometimes they're a little confused, but not really. I don't know.
And
But
then
it'll happen in every scene.
yeah, and he like it's like this weird thing where like if they're not in on the joke, like he wants you to be prepared for the joke and it almost feels like he's gonna subvert it, but he never does. He's just like here's the joke. And like again, like the very next scene is that they're in their house and then they like don't want to go outside because they're a little bit shy of the neighbors or maybe they're scared. I don't really remember, even though I literally just finished watching it. And they go outside and everyone's dressed up for Halloween, and so they're like, "Oh my God, look at our neighborhood! It's the best!" And so they go party with everyone. It's a great party, and then they get a job. Herman gets a job at one point during the
He gets
party.
his job from the show working in like a funeral home. Yeah.
Right. And so then the next and like that's a good sequence. Like I had fun with it. There's a couple of bad jokes, but it's a kids movie. I mean, I don't mind bad jokes. And so my brain is like having an aneurysm. And so like the next scene is
But like
him
we
going.
should like there's a lot of like mother-in-law style bad jokes, which is like that's like not for kids, you know? Like it's like
Yeah,
hack jokes that like as a kid I was like I wouldn't relate to like someone hating their mother-in-law. So it's almost like I don't know. It's not even the right kind of kids bad
right,
joke.
right.
You
It's like,
know?
well, and that's the thing that I think people don't realize about like the Munsters and the Adams Family and like even the Muppets. A lot of these shows weren't even the Flintstones. They weren't necessarily kids shows. They were for everyone. And so when you try to make it specifically for kids, you're taking something out of it. But you if you just make it for adults, you're also taking something out of it. It's the Star Wars problem. Like, I don't want to watch Andor go to work for 5 episodes. I want to watch Han Solo and Chewbacca shoot across and to meet Lando, not in a prequel. God damn you,
It's like
Disney. Um, and so it's this weird thing where it's like, if I'm an adult, I'm bored because there's not enough adult jokes, and the adult jokes are from the 50s. And if I'm a kid, I'm also bored because it's all jokes. And they're not funny because I don't understand them because I'm a little baby. And I'm like, where's my bottle? Where's my bottle, Josh? That's the end of. I'm like,
just ended on you saying
what
where's
is
my fault.
what is going on?
But like we don't like and then we should say to like the movie just ends like literally.
Yeah. They're gonna go to work and they see these regular people and then they freak out and then the brother comes and he's like, "Here's some money,"
Yeah,
and
he's
then
like
they're
I
like,
won it big in Vegas. They're like we're rich. It's like was that a plot?
and then it just ends and then it cuts to like a cartoon of Herman as a rock star and I'm like, no, you don't earn this cartoon of Herman
But
as a
like
rock
he
star.
wasn't trying to get a lot of money or it's like was he not going to take the job then like that wasn't a
Yeah.
conflict is
Well,
that
and
they
it's
were like needed a lot of money, you know.
here's the thing. Okay, so there's a part where Herman needs money and that part's in the last 15 minutes. It's not the plot of the movie. And so in the
Yeah.
last 15 minutes, Herman needs money. Then this is when he's buying the house because they spent all their money on the house. So they need money. And so they go to the party and then they win the costume contest, which gives no. So they go to the party. Then he gets a job as at the funeral home, and he's like, "Oh, we don't need money anymore. Our money problems are saved." And then they win the costume contest at the Halloween party, and they're like, "Oh, we don't need money anymore. Our problems are saved." And then the next day, the brothers like, "Oh, I won a lot of money," and they're like, now our money problem, it's like you had one problem that you tacked on to the end of this film, and now there's four solutions for this one problem that I didn't even realize was that big of a deal.
It's very much like that. And you remember that episode of The Simpsons from when it was definitely about like getting bad, where at the end they just had Otto run in and go "Surfs up, dudes!" It just
Yeah.
got some surfing, and like the actual like plot stops. That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, I guess they're rich.
They
They're
literally had the
doing this
brother
stuff.
come in and go, "Hey guys, I'm hauling my ass to Lollapalooza like John Christensen."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, okay, listen. I will say the good of this is that clearly Rob Zombie has a style. People like that style. I do not, except for one instance, which we'll talk about eventually. Um, and so, I'm always for any director getting to direct. If he gets to direct in his style, more power to you. Because I get to direct in my style, and I gotta pay for it every time. So Rob Zombie, keep making your weird little movies. I probably won't watch the next one. You know what? I probably will. Here's the thing. Even though I haven't really liked Rob Zombie movies, I'm always down to be surprised. I did not go into this movie or into any of his movies except for Halloween 2. Um, wanting to hate it. I always want to be surprised and be like, maybe this is the Lord of Salem part two for me, where it's the one I like. It has not happened since Lords of Salem, but I refuse to give up on him because he's passionate, he loves his wife, and he likes making movies. And those three things I can always get behind.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree. I've also never. I mean, I've seen a lot of his movies because you made me watch them. But
Yeah.
yeah,
See,
Lords
I
of
always
Salem is. I mean, it's still mixed, but
we're
it's
not gonna
definitely you're like,
talk about
okay,
Lords of Salem now.
there's like an idea there, but I don't know. There's a lot of movies since
I
then,
will,
or at least
I
two.
will say I love. Also, I have a pumpkin right there. Happy Halloween. I will say I do like Lords of Salem. I will defend Lords of Salem. I would have to watch it before I mentioned anything that happens in that movie because I do not remember. But it's a
I'll
good film.
defend. I'll defend the first 15 minutes of Halloween 2 that turns out to be a
That is
dream.
great.
That is
That
a
and that
cool
that's the
sequence.
weirdest thing because it's like, oh, so
That's like the
he doesn't
best.
want to do this.
Yeah,
That
like
15
that's the
minutes,
best.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
say that 15 minutes is better than Halloween 2, the actual Halloween 2. But then the rest of Halloween
or
2
Halloween Kills.
or Halloween, any of them but the first. Well, the other one with Danny McBride's okay.
The first Danny McBride was. Let's not get into it. It's so
Yeah, we're
late.
not gonna talk about the ending, guys. This isn't Halloween. Um, aren't you glad this
Yeah,
is on video yet? I can't wait for the people who still listen on the podcast. There's just 30 seconds when I'm not talking doing this.
it's just
And they just
yeah, it's good
stop.
too because mine probably won't work because of memory issues, and your video is clearly like the quality keeps fucking up. So
I
like we
don't
both
well
have
my
different
quality's good,
problems.
so
Oh,
maybe
maybe I
it's a
just see it
proxy.
poorly. Okay.
Yeah, ooh, that gives me hope that maybe this thing will turn out good. But anyway, guys, welcome back to the Bomb Squad. We've done all our guests. We don't know if William is coming back. He's taking a little bit of a hiatus to work on some work stuff. I'm also working on work stuff, but I don't ever stop working, so you will see more of me. And yeah, let's see how these videos work. Let's see if they make a big difference. And welcome back. Hope you guys, if you guys, I would say watch the Munsters. It's on Netflix. Like, what is it costing you?
Yeah, if you
Um,
just like if you throw it on in the background, you'll probably like it more than if you sit down to
you
watch
know,
it because you're like, oh, he looks pretty good for Herman Munster, you
the
know?
Munsters is the perfect movie to play in the background of a Halloween party where like you don't even have the
Yeah,
volume
it
on
just
because it
looks
looks
kind of
Halloweeny.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
found the good in it. The good is to put it on in the
Or like
background.
for kids who just want to see spooky people,
Yeah.
that's not really
I do
scary.
I do wonder if I would have liked this movie as a kid. I want to
I well,
say
there's there's so much front loaded plot where they're just talking to each other that would be very boring for
yeah.
kids. But then there is a lot of slapsticky stuff like the robot, like priests and stuff that it's like, oh, there's some
Yeah.
fun slapstick for
I mean, I did
kids.
like the original Munsters when I saw it, so who
Is
knows?
there a robot in the Munsters? I have not seen it since I was 10 or
The only
younger,
thing I
so.
know is that at one point they have a dragon in
Right,
their
and he
they
gets
call
it.
it and they call it Spot. I know that that's from
and
the show.
and you never see it in the show. I think because of limitations, they
Well, you
just
see its
you see its
snout.
tail or snout. You see
Yeah, the
little bits of
smoke comes
it.
out. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, that was kind of
How
cool.
creative and what an interesting, fun way to get around having a lower budget. Anyway, this is the movie then. And so we'll see you guys next time. Oh, also, will we have another podcast exclusive next week? Probably not, but we will have one very soon.
For what? Oh, wait, don't say it because then if we don't do it,
Oh no,
the 10 people who listen will
we are doing it next
not
week. So
care.
next week, this episode is going to last for quite a while because next week we have a podcast exclusive from one of a remake of one of my favorite movies of all time, filmed in one location. We'll see if the remake's going to do that. It doesn't look like it's going to, but it looks very, very cool. And so we will see you guys next week as Halloween officially starts and we raise some hell and
Oh,
we pinhead.
I only like the one where he's a World War II pilot.
I only like the one that takes place in space. So yes, guys, we'll see you guys next time on the Bomb Squad. Thanks for watching the Bomb Squad. Please, while you're here, give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it and it means a lot.